Hey, champs! I've seen a lot of videos that talk about weapons that used to be good or weapons that used to be bad in TF2, or changes this, a patch that, whatever. But I wanted to talk about something a little different. Something that, at least within recent memory, I haven't heard a lot about, and that's weapons that at one point were balanced, but because Valve just loves to mess with things, are no longer balanced. That doesn't mean that they're bad, or were nerfed into oblivion and can no longer be used. I mostly mean weapons that at one point were totally fine, totally balanced, and then maybe through one or two balance changes, today are no longer the same. They're either completely broken or underpowered, and nobody really likes to use them. Valve can be kind of fickle with these kinds of things, and I just wanted to go through and reminisce on some of the past weapons that I remember being pretty good, in a pretty good spot, but for one reason or another, just no longer are. First up is a pretty common example. I think a lot of you might think of this weapon whenever you think of weapons ruined by balance patches. The Righteous Bison. You know, the Righteous Bison was never truly the premier soldier secondary. I think everyone can agree on that. But it was a neat little change of pace. It was something that you could spam into a corridor or spam onto a control point with like 4 or 5 different people and rack up way more damage than you really should. A big part of that was because the projectile was super slow and could penetrate targets for some pretty damn good damage. Unexpectedly good damage. Until they nerfed it and decided, hey, we're gonna make the projectile way, way slower. And hey, we're also gonna reduce that hitbox of the projectile while we're at it. Doing this completely neutered the weapon. Now, they did backpedal on this change. I believe in Jungle Inferno, they decided to revert the old changes, but no, they didn't. Because to this day, there is still a massive, massive decrease in the projectile's hitbox. And the projectile itself still moves really, really slow compared to how it used to. And that's the main thing I dislike about this weapon. Leading your shots is incredibly difficult, and you get no damage as a reward compared to something like the rocket launcher or the shotgun. I mean, you can look at this clip. I'm in a tight corridor, there's a pyro, I'm shooting, and I somehow missed every single shot right there. I don't know how. I'm still trying to do something about this pyro, and there's absolutely nothing I can do, and I die for it. That's great. Next up, I want to talk about the Cladamore, or the Claymore, however you pronounce it. This is an example of a weapon that had one change over the years that completely ruined it for me. Now, in Tough Break, they decided to completely change this weapon into something that we don't even speak of. It was so bad, they reverted it, thankfully. At least, they reverted a lot of the changes, but they kept one change, and that one change ruined it for me. What it used to be was that this weapon gave you a minus 15% health penalty when you had it equipped. That is fine, because the Alawi booties, or the bootlegger, would basically negate this entire downside. So they decided to change it to where instead of having less health, you now take more damage from everything. That may not sound bad. That may sound on paper pretty much like basically identical, but it's the world of a difference because as a Demo Knight, you're incredibly reliant on your resistances for your shield. But because you take more damage from everything, it basically means that you have a weapon in your secondary slot equipped that basically just lets you charge. It doesn't provide any resistances depending on what shield you're wearing. Any day of the week, I will take less maximum health that I can manage plus some resistances than more maximum health that is essentially less effective health that fucks me over in the end because I'm not sure, okay, do I have like 150 health left? Or do I actually have like 200 health? Because it says 200 health, but I've also got no resistances. In fact, actually, I have a damage, I'm taking more damage from everything. It's fucked up. I don't like using this weapon anymore. It was really nice. I'm glad they reverted some of the bad changes in Tough Break, but still, I have my problems with it now. Sticking with Demo Man weapons, we have one here that I don't particularly think is bad, but I do think is way less interesting than what it used to be. The Lock and Load. The Lock and Load used to be kind of like the direct hit. It would reward you for landing direct hits with a 20% damage bonus. The downside was not only would your pipes shatter like they do today, but you actually had minus 50 capacity. That's right, you only had 2 shots in this thing, which explains the design. Then Valve decided to buff it, and they made it to where it had 3 shots. And this was a huge fucking problem. Not just because it had 3 shots, but also because of damage spread, a mechanic that is no longer present in TF2. This weapon should have dealt 120 damage every single time. Not quite enough to kill a light class, but still enough to make a difference. But with damage spread, there was a strong chance that you would one-shot every single light class in the game. That was a massive fucking issue. So they decided to nerf it into basically what it is today. Instead of giving you a flat 20% damage bonus, you would get a flat 20% damage bonus against buildings only. The reason that I dislike this is because it turned the Lock and Load from something that would reward you for aiming properly into something you just, I'm having trouble with this one sentriness. Let me slap on the Lock and Load for 30 seconds and then take it off immediately. Now that damage spread is no longer a mechanic by default in Valve servers, I think it's kind of ridiculous that it's still in this state. I think that the 3 pipes in its own right was still kind of stupid and should never have been a change that was made. But the 2-pipe version, before they changed it in 2014, is actually pretty good, and I wish that that was still what the Lock and Load was today. Like I said, it isn't really a bad weapon these days, but it's way less interesting in my opinion, and it's not something that you equip for entire games. You most likely switch onto it for 1 life, do the job, and then switch right back. And similarly to the Lock and Load, similar in the fact that it was an okay item and then they buffed it to high hell and then decided to nerf it into oblivion, we've got the Babyface's Blaster. The Babyface's Blaster used to not be different in concept, but definitely different in execution. It used to have a minus 35% movement speed penalty when you first spawn. That is making the Scout as slow, I believe, as a Demo Man. When you got the boost, however, you moved much faster, much like in every iteration of the weapon. Uniquely, the boost wouldn't just go away if you double jumped. The boost would go away if you jumped at all, even just a single jump. And I don't even think the boost would reduce like it does today. It would straight up just evaporate, and you would immediately go back to having a fucking ball and chain around your ankle. It may not sound like it, but this weapon at the time was still really, really good. I remember really enjoying it because it allowed you to trade your vertical mobility for more horizontal mobility, which was a fun idea. Apparently, Valve didn't think that this weapon was that good, so they decided to snort crack, and they buffed the fucking thing into insane heights. Now, instead of having a 35% movement speed penalty whenever you spawn, you would have just 10%, a minus 10% movement penalty when you spawned, and yet you would still go super fucking fast. So fast, in fact, that you could outrun your own hitbox. This was insane, so naturally, they nerfed it. And the main stat that ruined it was the lose boost on hit stat. It wouldn't be so bad of a change if it weren't for the fact that if you get sneezed on, you lose like half your boost, and it makes the entire weapon just irrelevant now. Here's a clip perfectly showing it. I use the blaster to get behind a heavy medic combo here, and I get towards the medic, miss a few shots, take a couple of bullets from the heavy, get reduced to a crawl, and get the floor wiped with my face because there's nothing I can do. I can't really escape from it because I'm so slow now. So we talked a lot about downgrades, but now I want to talk about an upgrade that was too powerful. Watch this clip here. No other weapon in the game allows me to backstab a fully aware heavy at 48 health in front of his whole team and then get away with it. No other weapon That was insane. We've got a few more clips here that show this. Clips of me being absolutely out of place and being, frankly, a terrible spy and just getting away with it because this weapon lets me do it. Now, this weapon used to not be nearly as good as it is now. It used to start you out with only 60 health, meaning the minus health on wearer was actually much larger than it is now. And it also used to have an interesting effect where if your opponent that you backstabbed had low health, you yourself would get less health from the backstab. Sometimes an irrelevant amount of health, meaning you really had to pick your battles and pick your targets a little bit more carefully in order to guarantee that you could actually get the health that you need to get out. On top of that, in Gunmetal, they buffed it to not only increase your health, not only add a base minimum of 75 health per backstab, but they also made it to where your maximum health is now over 200. Over 200 as a spy. Keep in mind, the overheal effect fades away a lot slower than other overheal effects do, like from a medic's medigun. That made this weapon absolutely insane. It took it from a weapon that was perfectly reasonable, perfectly balanced, to something that just now tips the scale into being overpowered. There is a reason that spy mains really, really love this knife in casual. It's because you can just backstab team after team after team and still come out with more health than a soldier. That is insane. And I'm not even that good of a spy, but even I can pull off some stuff that I really should not be pulling off with this weapon. So nowadays, it's insanely powerful. It is, by default, one of the strongest unlocks in the game, and there's a reason a lot of spy mains wear it, as opposed to what it was before, where you had to pick your targets a little bit, and there was a high chance of failure due to the fact of not getting as much health as you need, and you just generally started out with less health and less survivability with this weapon. And finally, we have the Cleaner's Carbine. I hate this weapon so much. What it used to do was it used to, on kill, give you guaranteed crits for 3 seconds. That was pretty alright. It had its downsides, trust me. The weapon itself still fired slowly and did no damage at all, so it made it incredibly unreliable in an actual fight, but that payoff for getting that last hit or that last shot was actually something that was pretty good. It wasn't insane, because 3 seconds is a pretty short window, but it was still really good because it meant that you could headshot people, quote unquote, without actually aiming for their heads for the next 3 seconds. It basically just let the sniper do what he already does, but slightly easier as a reward for getting a kill with a weapon that is objectively dogshit. But Valve thought that that was not good enough, or perhaps too good, or I guess just not balanced at all, so they changed it to where now on kill it gives you mini crits for 8 seconds. And then they added a fucking meter for some reason, so it went from a dogshit weapon that rewarded you for using it at the right time to just a dogshit weapon. And then also, Jarate. Why would I come out of spawn with no mini crits, with a weapon that I can barely defend myself with, when I could just come out of spawn with mini crits, fully ready to go? As you can see, this entire gameplay I've been trying to get the meter up, and finally, after I swear to God, like 2 hours, this is the best clip I got out of it. So here we are, we're right near the end, I get my meter up, okay. I'm gonna activate it right here. When I turn this corner, there's a pyro, got the huntsman, boom, I use it and the mini crit damage hits him. That's great. I had totally forgotten I had the bushwhacker until now, and the crits are already out by the time I remember, and I die to a Blutsauger medic. Good weapon. But I think that's about all the weapons that I would like to share today. There's probably more out there, so let me know if you guys have any opinions on weapons in the current day like this. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe out there.